Time travel had always been the ultimate dream for Adrian Falk, a physicist obsessed with bending the laws of reality. After decades of research, Adrian and his team finally perfected a machine that could pierce the veil of time itself. The Chronos device, they called it, a sleek metallic orb glowing faintly with a light that seemed neither of this world nor the next. On a crisp autumn evening, Adrian volunteered to be the first human traveler. His destination was simple: the year 1923, to observe a historical event for a mere 10 minutes. The calculations were precise, the settings exact. But as he activated the device and stepped into the swirling vortex of time, something went catastrophically wrong. The moment Adrian opened his eyes, he knew he wasn't in 1923. The air was thick and acrid, and the sky above churned with hues of green and purple. Strange, angular structures jutted out of the ground like jagged teeth, and a low, resonant hum seemed to emanate from the very earth beneath his feet. Adrian's heart sank. He wasn't on Earth anymore, or at least not an Earth he recognized. His watch, synced with the Chronos device, displayed a date, year unknown. As Adrian wandered the desolate landscape, he began to notice signs of life, or something resembling life. Shadows flickered at the edge of his vision, darting behind the jagged structures. When he turned, nothing was there. The hum grew louder, reverberating in his chest. He stumbled across a metallic object half buried in the ground, its surface covered in symbols he didn't recognize. Touching it sent a jolt through his arm, and for a brief moment he felt his mind slip. Images of countless timelines flashed before him: wars, civilizations rising and falling, worlds teeming with alien life. Adrian yanked his hand back, but the visions didn't stop. In them, he saw himself running endlessly through time, always pursued by something. A deep, guttural voice echoed in his mind: "You do not belong." Desperate to find his way home, Adrian activated the Chronos device once more. The world around him twisted and folded in on itself, and he felt the sickening pull of time bending. When he landed, he was in a dense jungle. The air was humid, and the sound of chirping insects filled his ears. At first he thought he'd made it back. But then he saw them, figures with elongated limbs and empty black eyes watching him from the shadows. They didn't move like animals or humans. Their jerky, unnatural motions seemed to defy the laws of physics. Adrian ran, his heart pounding as the creatures gave chase. They didn't make a sound, but their presence was suffocating. When he finally collapsed from exhaustion, he found himself face to face with one of them. Its hollow eyes seemed to pierce his soul. Before he blacked out, he heard the same voice again: "You cannot escape." When Adrian woke up, he was in a bustling city, New York, by the look of it. People walked past him, indifferent to his disheveled appearance. For a moment, relief washed over him, but as he looked closer, he noticed the cracks. The people moved in loops, repeating the same motions over and over. The buildings shimmered, like reflections on water. Adrian realized he wasn't truly in New York. He was in a warped fragment of time, a splintered reality. The voice returned, louder this time: "You are a trespasser. Pay the price." Adrian's watch began to beep erratically. The Chronos device was faltering, its energy depleting. As he fiddled with it, trying to stabilize the machine, the shadows of the elongated creatures began to materialize in the reflective surfaces around him. They were closing in. With no other option, Adrian pressed the emergency reset on the device. The world dissolved into chaos as he was hurled through time once more. His mind splintered under the strain, fragments of his identity scattering across the timelines. He wasn't sure how much more he could endure. Adrian landed in a dark forest. The trees twisted and gnarled. His body felt heavy, his thoughts disjointed. Through the haze he saw a figure, a man in tattered clothing, his eyes wild with fear. "Are you lost too?" the man asked. His voice trembled, and his words seemed to echo unnaturally. Before Adrian could respond, the man dissolved into dust, as if consumed by time itself. Adrian realized he wasn't the first traveler to get lost in the void. The creatures appeared once more, their hollow eyes fixed on him. They whispered now, a cacophony of voices saying the same thing: You will never escape. Adrian activated the Chronos device one last time, hoping against hope that he could find his way back. But deep down he knew the truth. Time was no longer his ally, it was his prison. Adrian Falk felt the crushing weight of despair as he activated the Chronos device, his last desperate hope to escape the temporal prison that had become his existence. The swirling vortex of time enveloped him once again, and he was hurled through a kaleidoscope of shifting realities, each one more fractured and alien than the last. When he landed, the air was eerily still. He was in a barren wasteland under a blood-red sky, the ground cracked and dry as if it hadn't seen rain in centuries. In the distance, a massive structure loomed, an obsidian spire that seemed to hum with the same resonant energy that had plagued him since his first jump. The spire called to Adrian in a way he couldn't ignore. He staggered toward it, his body battered and his mind teetering on the edge of madness. The closer he got, the louder the hum grew, and with it came flashes of memory, glimpses of the other travelers who had come before him. He saw their faces twisted in fear and despair as the shadowy creatures closed in on them. He saw their attempts to flee, their futile struggles against the relentless grip of time. And then he saw something else, a glimmer of hope buried within the spire. Adrian realized the structure wasn't just a beacon, it was a nexus, a focal point of temporal energy. If he could harness it, he might be able to stabilize the Chronos device and finally return to his own timeline. But as he approached the base of the spire, the shadows began to stir. The creatures emerged from the cracks in the ground, their elongated limbs twisting unnaturally as they moved. Their hollow black eyes locked onto Adrian, and their whispers filled the air. "You cannot leave. You are part of the cycle." Adrian ignored the whispers and activated the Chronos device, setting it to synchronize with the spire's energy. The device emitted a faint glow, its circuits struggling to process the raw power emanating from the structure. The creatures grew agitated, their whispers escalating into a deafening roar. They lunged at Adrian, but he stood his ground, his hands trembling as he worked the device. "You won't stop me," he muttered through gritted teeth. One of the creatures reached for him, its bony fingers grazing his shoulder. Adrian felt a jolt of pain as memories flooded his mind, memories that weren't his own. He saw centuries of history, countless timelines splintering and converging, and the horrifying truth behind the creature's existence. The creatures weren't just guardians, they were the remnants of those who had been lost in time. Every traveler who had failed to escape had been consumed by the Nexus, their essence twisted into a new form to serve as eternal sentinels. Adrian recoiled, his determination renewed. He refused to become one of them. With a final desperate surge of effort, he synchronized the Chronos device with the spire. The ground trembled as a beam of blinding light shot into the sky, tearing through the blood-red clouds. The creatures howled in agony, their forms disintegrating as the temporal energy destabilized. Adrian shielded his eyes and felt himself being pulled into the light. For a moment, he thought he had succeeded. When the light faded, Adrian found himself back in his lab. The Chronos device was in his hand, its once brilliant glow now extinguished. He collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. His colleagues rushed to his side, their faces etched with concern. "Adrian, what happened? You've been gone for weeks." Weeks. To Adrian, it had felt like an eternity. He tried to explain, but the words caught in his throat. How could he describe what he had seen, what he had endured? As he looked around the lab, a sense of unease crept over him. Something wasn't right. The shadows in the corners seemed darker than they should be, and the hum he thought he had left behind still echoed faintly in his ears. Adrian tried to move on with his life, but the experience had left him scarred. He avoided mirrors and reflective surfaces, terrified of what he might see. He avoided the lab, fearing the pull of the Chronos device. But no matter how far he ran, he couldn't escape the whispers. They followed him in his dreams, in the quiet moments of the night. And then, one evening, he saw them, the creatures, lurking in the shadows of his own home. Adrian realized the truth. He hadn't escaped. The Nexus had marked him, and the cycle would never end. He was no longer just a traveler. He was a part of time itself, bound to its endless looping horrors. In the dead of night, he activated the Chronos device once more. He knew it was futile, but he had no choice. The whispers grew louder, and the shadows closed in. As the device flared to life, Adrian stepped into the vortex, knowing he was lost forever. Weeks later, Adrian's colleagues discovered the Chronos device abandoned in the lab. Adrian was nowhere to be found, and his research notes had been burned. But late at night, those who worked in the lab swore they could hear whispers in the air and see fleeting shadows at the edge of their vision. The Chronos device sat silent on the table, its glow extinguished. But if you looked closely, you might see a faint flicker, a sign that time had not yet released its grip. Thank you for listening to my story. If you want to hear more scary stories, please like and subscribe to my channel.